Hello, this is Paul Hisselshorf from Global Partners. Ever get questions from customers that seem to be totally unreasonable? Customers will ask for things like impossible delivery times or ridiculous project milestones or service that's clearly outside the terms of their contract. Or how about requests that are actually impossible to deliver? You know, the ones that make you wonder if the customer understands the laws of physics. Strange as it may seem, we get these requests all the time. And not from customers that are clearly deranged or delusional, or who are simply trying to trap us into agreeing to something before we realize how impossible it will be to deliver without giving away the store. Requests that are not at all reasonable, or even possible for us to deliver, are frequently made by sincere, intelligent customers, which makes it even more difficult to say no to and be total customer focused. So what happens when you get one of these completely unreasonable, not remotely possible requests? Well, typically it's one of the following. Either you agree more or less to what the customer asks, and you end up not being able to deliver, and of course the customer blames you for not delivering, conveniently forgetting that you told him the request was unreasonable in the first place. Or you deliver on your agreement to their unreasonable demand by giving away the store, only now the people in your own organization are unhappy. Or you say no to the customer, and then he simply goes around you, which if it happens often enough results in the customer simply bypassing you on most requests. So what's the answer? How do you respond to customer requests that are unreasonable and impossible in a total customer-focused way? And how do you find outcomes that address the customer's real needs and safeguards the interests of your own company? The answer may be easier than you think. When you think about it, any request from a customer, or from your boss, or your teenage daughter for that matter, falls into one of the quadrants on this matrix. The request is either reasonable or not, or possible or not. So the first question to ask yourself is this: in which of the quadrants does the request fall? Then ask yourself, why is the customer asking for this? Usually, the customer knows that his request is not going to get an immediate yes. If he did, he likely wouldn't even ask. He would just expect you to do it. So for the requests that fall into these other quadrants, you need to understand what's behind the customer's request. What's the real issue the customer is trying to address? And why does he think that if you agree to his request, it will solve his problem? Which leads to the final, all-important question. What are the conditions that are going to make the customer's request both reasonable and possible for him and for you and for your organization? Conditions are like alternatives. They enable you to, in effect, say no to the customer, but in a customer-focused way. For example, instead of saying yes or no, which can create all sorts of problems, you can say something like this: your initial request is difficult for me to say yes to, and here's why. But under certain conditions, we could say yes. Let's discuss what those conditions might be. This approach demonstrates a number of total customer focus characteristics. First of all, it shows that you're open to new ideas and willing to consider any and all alternatives that help the customer achieve his goals and solve his problems. Second, it communicates to the customer that you want to understand all of his challenges, including those hidden below the surface. And third, it opens the door to a collaborative dialogue where you and the customer can discuss alternatives that solve the customer's problem and keep your own organization whole. So what do effective conditions sound like? Well, here's a few critical factors to consider. First of all, they need to be realistic. You want to be sure that the conditions you propose have a realistic chance of being accepted not only by the customer, but by his boss and other people in his organization. Proposing something that will never fly with your customer or couldn't work for whatever reason is worse than a waste of time. It also indicates that you may not be completely sincere about trying to help. Second, you need to be sensitive to the below-the-waterline issues that may be driving this request, and make sure that your proposed conditions deal with these. There will almost always be some factor behind the request that the customer doesn't tell you at first. You have to think about what those factors might be and propose conditions that address them. Likewise, you need to be sensitive to the strong possibility that there's someone else behind this request, like the person's boss, or his team, or his financial controller, and be sure to propose conditions that will satisfy those people as well. Now you need to be a bit creative with the conditions you propose. Suggesting the same thing you suggested the last time the issue came up indicates that you either don't really care enough about the customer's problem or you're not very creative. And finally, and this is really critical, avoid suggesting that all the customer has to do is pay for the request and you'd be happy to comply. Customers know this, so when they ask you for something that they could get simply by giving you money, the assumption you should make is that they can't or won't pay for it. In this case, you have to show them the value they're getting from you and why it's worth paying for. Achieving balanced outcomes using the reasonable possible matrix is one of the three critical shifts that companies and individuals need to make in order to become total customer focused. To learn more about how to apply the tools to make the shifts and become a total customer focused organization, sign up for one of our public workshops in the US and Europe. To learn more about these total customer focused programs and to register for the upcoming sessions, simply click on the link below.